Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, my friend and brother Ali. Thank you for being here. It's the Travelers Podcast. I announced last week that we're releasing a new album called Love and Service. And the first single, the first song, the first sampling, the first chapter from that album, which is called Ottomans, is out now. It's streaming everywhere. There's also an animated video clip, like an animated short. We're not just saying a video, but an animated short, because this album will actually be a fully animated film. 13 songs, 40 minutes. And the producer who made all of the music, who's gone for years by Unjust, now he's crossing out the un, and he's going by Just, but the un is still there just because of the fact that that's what people have known him by. And inshallah, he'll be on the podcast soon. We'll be able to talk and he'll be able to tell his story. But he is not only an amazing producer and is a beautiful friend and a beautiful person, but he also is an illustrator and animator. And so these videos that are going to come out for each of these chapters of this film and then eventually the full film, inshallah, they're all hand-drawn. Like, it's not AI, it's not computer, you know what I mean? Like, this is all stuff that starts by hand. I mean, you use some of those things, you use some of those tools to enhance and to, help certain things along. But each of these videos, the heart of these shorts, these vignettes, these visual chapters of the album that we created together, they start being drawn by hand, which is really dope. And they each have a different style. And they add so much to the experience of the album. And I'm really grateful for them. So last week, we put out the song Ottomans, and we also put out the animated short. And then also on Friday, I went in the studio and I did a live performance, or like an in-studio performance. And it's important to me, I'm probably going to say something on social media. It's important to me that people know that, sometimes you see a clip online of somebody and they're holding a mic or there's a mic in front of them. And like, I'm a recording artist, so I know what it sounds like when somebody punches in or when somebody has multiple takes. And there are people that do a lot of that where it's really obvious. And I'm not going to call them out and say their names. But there are people that punch a lot. And most people do now, because of the technology. When I say punch, I mean like, there may be a particular line or two that like, oh, I could have said that a little better. Maybe I didn't even flub the words, but, maybe just my timing or my breath control or something like that. Very few people deliver one solid take. But I was raised like that. Like, I was raised doing that. Now, I do punch on my records most of the time. I was just making music recently, and I wrote a really great verse that I feel really great about. I'm like, man, I might ask Black Thought to be on this song. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, man, I'm rapping. Like, I did my thing. And I wrote it, and I didn't have any way to record it, like a studio type of thing. So I pulled out my phone, and I played the beat on my computer, and I just rapped it all the way through. And it might have been the first take. I think it was. And so I just sent that phone recording to the producer, and he was like, yo, you did this in one take. Like, it's on your phone. There's no way to fake it. I'm like, yes, And he was like, yeah, I kind of want to put this out, this phone recording. Like, I kind of want this to be the song. I'm like, nah, man, this is one of my favorite verses. Like, no. But he's like, man, I just think it's dope, So anyway, a lot of people fake them. A lot of people go in the studio, and they are lip syncing something that they already recorded in a studio setting and recorded it a bunch of times or punched in certain lines or whatever, and they got it perfect. But that's not what I did here. Like, I turned the camera on. My man JJ, this beautiful Kenyan brother who lives in Istanbul, who we've done several things together now that'll be part of the rollout of this album. I want to do these in-studio performances of at least the singles that we put out, just so that I can like rap to the camera and make eye contact with you and show you this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing. And they're all going to be like that, like one take. Not that I can only do one take, At the end of the one that we just dropped for Ottomans, you hear me say, "Word, I like that one," because we did it, I think, 5 times. And then it's like, because I say all the words and I say, but sometimes in the studio it can be difficult to start to get to the point where you're really feeling it, But I walked in off the street, and he had all kind of lights and everything set up, ready to go. It's difficult to record me and photograph me because light is the most important part for doing camera stuff, and that's why I've always hated doing stuff on camera. Part of it is because I don't like the way my body looks. I just feel uncomfortable in my body. But then also, I know I'm not extremely photogenic because the two things for getting good photos and being photogenic, number one, is light, and I'm extremely light sensitive. So the amount of light that it takes to take a good picture or make a good video, I can't take it. Like, I can't open my eyes if I'm doing that. So it just makes it really challenging. But then the other thing is, part of being photogenic is having some contrast, either between, and it's usually between your eyes and your skin, or your skin and your hair, your eyebrows, your beard, your makeup, your whatever, which is why makeup is such a prominent thing for models specifically. Because when you're taking someone's photo, it doesn't show up, it doesn't read the way that your eyes read when you're with somebody. So there are all kind of people that you see them on TV or movies or whatever, and you think that they are the most gorgeous person ever, but they're just very photogenic. When you're with them, it's like, it might be like that, but it might not, And then there are some people, when you're with them in real life, it's just like, man, you got something very special. But so yeah, I just walked in, and my man JJ understands, and then also like different colors, because of the fact I'm albino. It's just tough. It's difficult to do photo stuff and video stuff with me. But I'm very comfortable with him, and he lights me in a way that I can handle it. And he's just very accommodating. And I was like, man, how are you so good at this and at being accommodating? And he's like, man, he's African. He's from Kenya. And he's like, man, you're working in a white-dominated film space. The lights and the coloring and things like that was not set up to make Black people look beautiful. And it's one of the things actually that me and BK bonded on when we first met. Me and BK wanted to produce our podcast, my DJ for 10 years, my partner in Travelers Media. He and I went to his house. The first time I ever went to his apartment, he had all these like pro-Black radical books, and culturally he's not like that. So anytime that I knew a white person that was like that, like they were Muslim and they were, they just had a vibe about them that was like, yeah, you seem like you would know who Dr. John Henrik Clarke is. You seem like you would know about, these certain people. But Brendan culturally had none of that stuff. Like the way he carried himself, the way he dressed, the way he talks, you know what I'm saying? Brendan does not, he puts on no airs. And that's part of what struck me about it is like I went to his house and I'm like, yo, like what's all this Black Panther stuff? And like, I've said it before, but like I know why I know this stuff, but why do you know all this? I never knew a white person that was like that. And he was from Milwaukee, you know what I'm saying? It's not like he's from Oakland or something, But one of the things that we bonded over was Spike. We both really love Spike Lee movies. And he said to me, something about She's Gotta Have It. He said that was the first time that it really felt like, and it's a black and white film, if I'm not mistaken, but he's like, the way that they were able to translate the beauty of Black people in film. It's like that's one of the times that you really get to see that in a way that's really beautiful. And we've just both agreed that, like, yeah, that, that's such a gift, And then going forward, then that's become a thing. But in any case, so JJ is like, man, learning about the world of video and film and photography and things, you learn it in this really like white-centered space. And so you have to learn, or you have to seek out ways to make people, show up beautifully. So he's like, I had to learn a lot of that myself. And so anyway, we did all of those. Those things came out. Ottomans. The song is out and the video is out, the animated short, and then also the in-studio performance. And the response has been overwhelming, not in the sense of numbers. Like I don't expect that I'm going to do the same numbers that I did when we were kind of like in the height of our career, when there was, I had the whole record label behind me. And then also, all of that stuff. It's not going to be the same in terms of the numbers. But the way that people responded to the song, that's always what matters to me, When you own your music, it's like me and my partners. My partners on this project are Jess and Brendan. And so we'll be fine financially. I probably will make more, even in the pre-order for this album, than I would have made on a label. Just because of the fact that, yes, because of so many factors, you know what I mean? I'm controlling the expenses and what gets spent. I see it all. When you're on a label, even if it's a good, fair situation, you're getting paid last. And in most cases, you're getting paid least. And also, you just have to trust, you don't have to not only trust them that they're not lying about what they spent, because the label makes back all the money that they spent before they share anything with you, before you get anything. And you just got to trust that that's what they spent. Now, on Rhymesayers, it's like these people aren't liars. So I don't ever think that they're lying. But you also have to trust that they're looking out for your financial interest as an artist. So on a label, it's like when you run a label, it's like running a family. You know what I'm saying? And so you have all of these interests and all these different people, and you're trying to keep the family going. So the people who own and run labels are trying to keep the label going. So they want their artists to be good, but it's like there are certain things that might be good for the overall good of the label that might not be as good for the artist. So if they have certain people they work with, and that person has a certain amount that they charge, for the label, it's like, okay, let's go ahead and pay them the tens of thousands of dollars to work on this album that they normally make. Because in the overall, like you get really good relationships with your partners that way. It's like, man, I'm gonna drop 8 albums this year, or 4 even, and you're gonna work on all of them. And for each one of them, you're going to make tens of thousands of dollars. That means that the label is a priority for this partner. But that might not be the right partner. Like, it might not be maybe I'm not doing something that requires that. So spending those tens of thousands of dollars that are going to have to be paid back to the label before I see a dollar from my project, that might not be in my best interest. And it doesn't mean that anybody is being slick or sneaky or sideways or scoundrel-like, or just we can just do S's with this all day. But it doesn't mean that anybody is doing anything slick. It just means that they might not always have the same interests in mind. And, that's why it's good to have managers, or just somebody whose role it is to look out for each individual specifically. Who looks out for my interests? And that's one of the things that I noticed, being in a situation where it's what they call a 360, where it's like the record label and the management are the same people, and and the accountants work for them, and all of these, and then even all the people that we partner with, the studio people, the mixing and mastering engineers, the video people, those people normally work for them. So, just being able to control your own expenses, and then also the second the first dollar comes in, I'm seeing it. It's going to us. It's going directly to us, And I've noticed over the few years that I've been running my own career, it's a big difference with everything, and I understand it better, and then all that. So, I say all that to say that I figured the numbers wouldn't be the same. Like I've got many videos from many different albums that have just millions of views, and now the one that we're on now is not that. But then also I'm spreading them out over platforms, because I'm also making the decision. There's all these decisions you can make. Like, you could post your video only on YouTube, and then you just then you just post little clips of the video, and then on social media, and you point people to YouTube. Well, we made the decision that I just want this stuff to be seen by as many people as possible. And we don't have a distributor. We don't have a big machine behind us. I just want the people that are following whatever we do, wherever they follow, I want them all to see it. So we posted the full videos on all the social media and also on YouTube. So all the views aren't going to be concentrated on YouTube. You know what I mean? So there's not going to be one place where you look at it and you're like, oh, they're killing it. But if you add them all together, then the view count is still pretty good. The podcast is the same way. Certain episodes that have a video element, you'll look and it'll be like, oh, they're getting 30,000 views. That's certain guests with a video element. Certain other guests don't have that. And then ones like this that are audio only, they might only get 300 views. Not 300, but it'd be more like 1,000. But there's a big difference between 1,000 and 30,000. And so if I'm asking somebody who's not a really good friend of mine, because I still do all the booking when we do have guests, I do all the booking myself. So if I reach out to somebody and I'm like, hey, like somebody I just kind of know, and I say, hey, would you please come on my podcast? They're going to go to YouTube because that's the place where they see numbers. And they might look at an episode like, well, what did this latest episode do? 700 views. I'm not about to take 2 hours you know what I mean? For 700 views. I could just go on my own platform where I'm going to get, maybe they're getting 30 on what they do. Is this interesting to you? All I'm saying is, what I'm trying to say is, thank you for the support for this music, because this is a project that really means a lot to me. And there are songs on here that really matter a lot. The way that this project came together is just a really very natural, organic, real project that I didn't expect to come together the way that it did. I knew that I had a lot of fun making the music. I knew that it was very therapeutic for me. I knew that I was, I just really loved working with this guy. Like, me and Jess have become really great friends, and I really love him. And I knew that there was a lot of amazing tie-ins that were really dope. And so we'll get into that when we talk to him on the podcast, inshallah. But all that to say, please do support, because there's no big machine behind it. There's no machine at all behind this. It literally is the three of us, me, BK1, and Just. And we're doing a lot, you know what I'm saying? And it's dope. And I'm very grateful. And I love the way it's coming together. But you sharing and you liking, and this is what I'm saying, the response, so many people are sharing the music. Like, every time I go on Instagram, I just see that people have shared the stuff to their stories over and over and over again. And that means a lot. Like y'all are the people that decide how far this goes. Like, we're back to the most genuine and real form of independence. Like, it's just us and y'all. And that's the way a lot of people run their careers now. But it's a beautiful thing. So that leads me to what I want to talk about today, which is the fact that my little brother, my younger brother, he's 40 years old. I don't call him my little brother, but he's a married man. He's got a daughter. But he inherited from my mother. So my mother died when I was 25. Of cancer. We were really close. Were we really close? We had a very rough, turbulent, rocky relationship. I did with both of my parents. And if you go to the first episode of this podcast, the first two, we dropped two the first day. One is called The Opening, and that's me talking about my life. And then also the Dr. Cornel West episode, they both came out on the same day. Because I was like, man, let's start heavy. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's give people a lot if they want to binge. Like, let's let them binge from day one. So that's what we did. And I talk in that episode about the fact that my parents are from Madison, Wisconsin. My parents are white. And I liken it to them. I liken it to how people are when they move to another country. So I know a lot of people whose parents came from Somalia or Pakistan, and they feel like, well, we're Somali, we're just going to live in America, and we're going to raise our kids Somali or Palestinian or, Salvadorian or whatever. Like, we're going to raise our kids the way that we are, and because these are our children. And it's like, yes, but also they live in a very different world, and they also have to be of that world that they live in. And so they're not just going to be you, and they're not going to be who they were if you had stayed back home. And so for me, me being albino and the like racial kind of dimensions that are there, just meant that I was raised in a very different way. I was raised in a very different environment from my parents. And from the time I was really young, that caused a lot of tension between us. And they loved me. I know they did. And they tried to support me, and they tried to stick with me. I just have so many memories of them doing that. But it caused major rifts between us. When I was 15, I became Muslim. But I started this journey when I was 7 years old. Like I think I told the story in the first episode, but I just remember I was still in elementary school. So I may have been 10, but we were driving on a long trip. We were living in Michigan. My parents' families both are in Madison. So we were driving from Michigan to Madison, which is a long drive. And we were driving overnight, and we had to stop for gas. And I used to stay up and talk to whoever was driving because I could pull late nights, even as a little kid. And so I would stay up and talk to whoever was driving. That was our rule. Like whoever was riding shotgun had to stay awake and talk to the driver. That's how you keep them awake, keep the family safe. So we're driving in the middle of the night, and it was me and my dad. And I was 10 years old probably. And we pulled over, and my dad said, we're out of gas. So we were looking for a gas station, couldn't find one. And so finally he found this little mom and pop one that was connected to somebody's house. It's like they had one pump, they had one little tiny area, and then their house, like little storefront kind of thing, but like a little tiny box type of situation. And then their house. And so we pull up, and he actually knocked on the door of the house. And it's probably 4:00 in the morning. And this lady came out in her like robe or something, or, she came out, she turned on the pump, filled up with gas, she ran a pot of coffee, and it was this really like sweet, nice interaction. And I could just tell it was like heartwarming. It was beautiful. But we got in the car, and even me at 10 years old, and this is the 80s, this is like the early 80s still. And I'm like, I just told my dad, like, if we were black, we couldn't have done that. And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the upper Midwest, a black man could not knock on white people's door at 4:00 in the morning. Like, we would have had to sleep in the car. We would have had to pull over, sleep in the car because we were about to run out of gas, and hope that just sleeping in the car, that the police didn't come along, or some citizen, some white person who just thinks like, oh, this looks suspicious, I should do something about this. Just living life. Like, I knew enough about life to know that black people just are not safe in any situation, especially one like this. And my dad just lost it. He was like, I'm so sick of all this. And I mean, that was the kind of ongoing tension between me and my parents. And it wasn't all tension. And like I said, they did a lot to show me, to try to bond with me and to try to connect with me. It's just that there were certain truths that I couldn't not know. And I'm not a person that is quiet about things that are true. And I wasn't berating him. I didn't tell him like, you're a racist devil. You know what I'm saying? I just was acknowledging the fact that a black family could not have done what we just did. But people don't like to hear those kinds of things. Just like now talking about the Palestinians, there's a lot of people that's just like, shut up about the Palestinians. Like, we're going to do what we're going to do. And a lot of innocent people are just going to die. We're basically going to commit. It is a genocide. It is ethnic cleansing. And for 75 years, it has been apartheid. It's true. It's true. It's just like, I'm connected to the Palestinians as a human being. Also, I'm a Muslim. Also, I've had this analysis. I've known about colonialism from the time I was a little kid. I've known about white supremacy from the time I was a little kid. I know those things, and I feel fortunate to know them. But to just even when it's as simple as, okay, what about the Palestinians though? It's like you gotta not exist anymore if you're talking about that. You know what I mean? Like I know what it means to say those things, and I know it in my family. And growing up, my brother was always closer to my dad, and I was always closer to my mom. But they both did a lot to try to show me love, and I know that. I know it in my bones. But, then I became a Muslim. Well, first, before that, my friends were in the street, and I was into hip hop, and I was in danger. And that was troubling to them, and I understand that. And they just didn't want me to be in danger, but they didn't understand I love my friends, and my friends love me, and my friends are in danger, and it's not because of anything they did. My white parents from Wisconsin could not see that. And if you would have asked them, they would be like, we are not racist, we're anti-racist. They identified with like the radical leftists to a degree in Madison. They believed in that stuff, but they could not see that, like, hey, I'm not gonna not love my friends, and my friends are in danger, and it's not because there's something wrong with them. It's not because I'm choosing the wrong friends. You know what I mean? Like I had my friends were all black and growing up, especially in high school and like middle school and stuff, and with one or two exceptions, and it's like they were all types of people. Like some of them were people that you would look at and be like, oh, that this person's in the street. But there are other people that were going to church. You know what I'm saying? Other people that were playing sports. Other people that were doing well in school. And it didn't matter. They were all in danger. You know what I mean? They were all in danger. This is why when I heard Malcolm X, I'm like, he's telling the truth. Like I felt so good to hear somebody tell the truth in a way that's like strong. That's why these type of figures are important. And even if you don't agree with every single thing they say, I don't agree with every single thing that Minister Farrakhan has ever said, but I know what it felt like in 1990 to get tapes and to hear tapes of Minister Farrakhan and to hear Malcolm X and to hear Public Enemy and to hear these people speaking in this way. It's like it has a profound impact on the spirit and on the soul. And everybody has something like that. I mean, because we live in a culture that's not healthy and it's not good for anybody. It's dehumanizing. And no, the world hasn't always been like that. Like there were traditions that were really about true culture, about true community. Not that they were utopias. They weren't. You know what I'm saying? The human condition was still there. But there have been times where like this dehumanizing reality hasn't always been the dominant way. And it's hard for people to fathom that who've never experienced it. But it hasn't always been like this. And everybody in our culture is being harmed in some way by the system, by the order, by the social order. So I just say that part to say that even white men, when certain people, when they hear Jordan Peterson or, some of the people that are on the Joe Rogan show, they have that sense of like, well, I might not believe in everything that this guy is saying, but there's something inside me that I feel there's a very real pain that I'm experiencing that I don't know how to put words to, that no one is speaking for. And now here is a clear, articulate person who is unapologetically giving voice to the pain that I'm experiencing just because I'm me. I didn't do anything wrong, So I would just say everybody has somebody like that. You know what I mean? Everybody has somebody that's like, yes, this person speaks to me. You know what I mean? And maybe it can be like even if it's like a weirdo. So like Yassine Bey is doing these shows right now where he's doing MF Doom covers. Maybe they're not covers. Like he's interpreting MF Doom material. I haven't been to any of them. I just missed one of them by a couple days in London. But he's doing MF Doom shows. It's called Bey on Doom. And The thing about Yasin with Doom, like I knew Doom, I love Doom, I was a big Doom fan. I could sit here and quote MF Doom lyrics. The way Yasin Bey loves MF Doom is another level because, Yasin had so many different levels, but he always felt like a weirdo. You know what I'm saying? So like, now we look at Yasin. Yasin's been in some major motion pictures. Like Yasin Bey was in The Italian Job. You know what I'm saying? And he was in, big stuff. And he could have been a movie star. He opted not to be. He could have been a bigger person in popular music. He opted not to. Like, there are very few people that I know that chose not to become more famous. Most of us, we never really had we would have had to fight. I know people that chose not to fight for it. And I'm one of those. Like, I chose not to fight for it. Then I know a lot of people that did fight for it. You know what I'm saying? Hassan Minhaj fought for it. Another number of other people that I know fought for it. And then there's some people that just kept doing what they're doing and it worked out. And that's why I want to cry when I think about Killer Mike and what Killer Mike winning that Grammy and standing there and dude, like seeing him, how excited he was. And we're not even extremely close. But him and LP, they just stuck to their guns. They just did what they always did and it worked for them. And it's like, you just feel so happy when that happens. You know what I mean? And then also, his album is so true. He's another one of those guys that's like, man, I don't agree with everything he says. He was buddy one time with Bill Maher, and I can't stand Bill Maher. I can't stand him. I can't stand this man. He's just so pompous and like it's about things that he does not know anything about. This man knows nothing about Islam. And I mean, he has just said some of the most horrific genocidal things. And there was a time when when I kind of messed with Bill Maher. Me and Aunt actually took our wives one time and we went to a Bill Maher show together and it was dope, It actually wasn't that dope. It wasn't that great. But there was a time when I was like, maybe there's something to this Bill Maher cat. But anyway, Killer Mike was on Bill Maher and he was saying, we need to do away with these religious books. And I'm just like, it's like people say stuff that you don't agree with, you don't like. But overall, who that man is and what he means and hearing him say the things that he's saying and knowing, just being close to that world and knowing what that's like. Man, tangents on tangents with this brother Ali guy. But I'd say all that to say that Yasin Bey feels a certain way about Doom, like, oh, I get it. And he's doing that for himself, but it's giving voice to something in me that never had a voice before. And so that's a beautiful thing when that happens. So, as a kid, I struggled with my parents a lot. And I imagine it was really difficult for them. And, but I also learned a lot about well-intentioned, genuinely good white people and just how hard it is for them to see it. Just because they haven't experienced it. They just don't know. They just don't get it because it's so foreign to them and they haven't experienced it. And I watched these like young like white Jewish American filmmakers that made Israelism. And there are people that criticize the Israelism film. So Israelism is, it's a film made by young white Western Jews explaining the way that they feel like they were propagandized to believe in the political ideology of Zionism and the way that they feel like they were brainwashed. And then they're processing their way out of that and talking about it. And this is the type of thing that the rest of the kind of like white world hasn't done. And this is why I say I have very, very deep love and admiration and honor for the Jewish community, but just the same way that I am and just the way that I respect white people who is like when you're in a situation of power, and I'm talking about you got the military, you got the police, you got the media, you got the educational institutions, you got the banks, and this is a situation for white people, and you control the narrative and all this stuff. The people that are self-critical in that position, that's what I respect, because that's what I resonate with. And to me, that's also what it means to be a situation and a person in a position of had to have an advantage, but to be a believer in something greater than yourself. And to me, that's Allah. That's what Allah is. But there are people that say, well, I believe in the greater good and all these truths and things like that. And so I'm saying, like, okay, this is the overlap that we have. This is the bond that we have. And so there are people like Michelle Wolf, for example, the comedian Michelle Wolf. I love her. I think she's hilarious. I got to know her. I love her as a person. But she's a white woman who white women rallied behind because they're like, oh man, we got one. And I think they were responding to her the way that white dudes respond to Jordan Peterson, or the way that some men respond to Andrew Tate, or I don't like these people, to be fair. Like, I don't believe in these people. But I understand what it is in a person that makes them respond to that, But white women were responding to Michelle Wolf when they saw her do the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And then she came back and did her first comedy special after that, called Joke Show. And man, the way that she, as a white woman, makes amazing comedy out of, the kind of dual nature of what it is to be a woman, but to be white. And the way that she turns a mirror on other white women is really amazing. Like, it's really masterful. And it's hilarious, you know what I'm saying? And she continues to do that. And I just think it's so dope. Hopefully she'll come on the podcast sometime. I haven't even asked her. My guess would be that I could be like, hey, Michelle, would you come on the podcast? She's such a beautiful person. I just imagine she'd be like, yeah, I got to go for a run. And then, like, she'll just show up in all her running stuff and be like, yeah, let's talk. She's the best, man. Shout out to Michelle Wolf. I love her like crazy. But man, I'm saying a lot to just get to what I want to say. So I had a tough time with my parents. I had a tough time with my family in general, but I learned a lot about what they don't know, what they don't understand. And they didn't choose to not know it, but they don't know it. And they don't know what they don't know. They're not even aware that, there are different levels. There are different types of ignorance. In the Islamic tradition, they say there's simple ignorance, where somebody just doesn't know something. And they're not protective of their ignorance. They're not protecting their ignorance. It's just they don't know. Like, they haven't been exposed to certain information or teaching or guidance or whatever. They just don't know. That's simple ignorance. And maybe they're even aware, yeah, I don't know about medicine. Like, I've never trained in medicine, so I don't know about that. But there are people that do know about it. I'm just not one of them. Like, that's simple ignorance. But then there's compound ignorance. When a person, it's like ignorance that becomes an identity. The ego gets a hold of it, and that ignorance becomes an identity, where it's like anything that I don't know, either it doesn't exist, or it's a lie, or it's invalid. Nothing outside my experience is valid. That's compound ignorance, and that's a problem. And that's what I experience with a lot of people who are in a position where life hasn't forced them. Their conditions haven't forced them to deal with this stuff. And I know that for me, being an albino, I had experiences really young where I was forced to, in my own body, in my own life, wrestle with this stuff. I talk about, and just one of the examples I talk about is that I was getting, dehumanized, demoralized, bullied, not physically, because I learned pretty quickly, just fight. If you just fight, people won't bully you, even if you lose. And I'm not the greatest fighter. You know what I'm saying? I have daughters, and they're like, Daddy is the biggest, strongest daddy. And I'm like, well, you're 4 years old, and I could just pick you up and throw you on the couch. I can, throw you up in the air and catch you. And I'm just like, man, I hope I don't have to fight one of these MMA Turks someday. Because, man, you go see your dad at a different light. But they'll be like, hey, man, Daddy's got heart. You know what I mean? I just will do it. And I happen to be big, and I happen to be a little crazy. I've got enough anger from all the injustice that when somebody's being unjust to me or anyone else, it's like all the anger that I've ever experienced might go into this moment. You know what I'm saying? Like I might, trauma does that. You you do have false universals. It's like, I'm not just fighting you, I'm fighting every man that was ever messed up to a woman. You know what I'm saying? And so I might try to stab you. That took a real quick turn, but for real, that's how I am. It's like, man, when men are being bullies to women and men are in that kind of space with women, I get stabby. I was around somebody that was like that one time, and like, man, I on tour, and I went to the Army surplus store and bought a knife. You know what I'm saying? One time, me and my wife were sitting in our house, and we hear this woman outside yelling, "Somebody, please help!" We're like in the crib. It's midnight or something. I got on hoop shorts and a t-shirt and no shoes, and I ran outside like that. I grabbed a big knife out the kitchen and just ran outside. And my wife, who is now a therapist that helps women, you know what I'm saying, that like works with women that are in this situation, she's like, "Yo, like your whole body, what happened to you?" And I'm like, I just can't with that type of energy. You know what I'm saying? I can't do it. You know what I'm saying? Like like if I would have got up on that dude, I might be in jail right now, because that's just the way. That's how my body responds to that type of thing. So, and this has been building, this is just part of what I live with, that I, in my body, know these types of things. So my mom, she was adopted. My mom dyed her hair blonde. She was adopted by a Norwegian family. She dyed her hair blonde. Her last name was made Anderson, which was her family name. And she just fit in. And so she was like, "Oh, we're just going to dye your hair." And so we went through all this stuff, and it ended up really depressing me. And there was a black woman that I knew at my school that explained to me, black is beautiful. They're like, when people are treating you like you're not a full human, and I was 8 years old, by the way, when this happened. 8 years old, maybe. I can't remember if it was second grade, first grade, third grade. It's blurry, but I know it was early elementary school. It wasn't fifth grade. But she said, people are demoralizing you. She's like, black people went through this thing where we permed our hair and and tried to look more white. But what it does to the soul is you're saying to yourself, the people that are demoralizing me, not only are they right, but I should try to look more like them to try to be appealing to them. And she basically told me about the idea of black is beautiful. Like at some point there was this movement to cut the perm out of our hair and to wear our hair natural and to try to, as much as possible, embrace African stuff. Malcolm X and others called it cultural nationalism. And that also led to a whole confusing thing with me, because I'm like, okay, this is the world that's inspiring me and making me feel like I can be a human being, but I'm 9 years old. I don't understand all the implications of this. So when I was 13 years old, I had an Africa medallion. Like I was on the whole thing. I was just like, yeah, this is it. You know what I mean? These are the teams that are out here, and this is what I am. So you imagine my like white Madison, Wisconsin raised parents, so I went through all this stuff, and my friends are getting arrested and getting shot, and I'm going to the events that are getting shot up and people are getting arrested, and I got arrested, and I was in danger, and somebody I knew sold drugs right in front of my mom one time, and it was really tough for them. My mother had an ulcer one year. It was tough. I got jumped by some white boys that wanted to be down but weren't. Win Some, Lose Some is a song that I have about that. You know what I mean? But I mean, I was in bad shape, I still have a tooth that's a funny fang-looking tooth because they banged my head on the lockers, this group of dudes. And so my tooth was chipped, and so they shaved it down, but now it looks even more like a fang. But so this is how we were growing up. And then I became a Muslim. And then, that was at 15. And I put my whole self into that, because I'm like, okay, this is a positive way to channel all of this. And also the leader of the community that I joined was the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Imam Warathuddin Muhammad. May Allah have mercy on him. I love him so much to this day. And he was a person who, he had a certain vision for what American Islam could be, and he updated and I would say interpreted a lot of the language of the Nation of Islam and really brought it in alignment and in context with the global tradition of Islam. So that's the community that I joined. And so I love the 5%ers, but I wasn't part of that group, never been part of that group. I love the Nation of Islam. I'm not part of the Nation of Islam. I love the Motor Science Temple and the Salafis and the Tablighi Jamaat. There was a bunch of different groups kind of in urban Islam, like black urban Islam. But I wasn't part of any of those movements. I was part of Imam Warathuddin Muhammad's community. And, and then when I was 17 and still in high school, I married a black Muslim girl from Gary, Indiana, which is one of the roughest places in America, no question. I think it's worse now than it was in the 90s, but in the 90s, it was no joke. And she came from Gary, and her family had all of the stuff that comes along with that. And so suddenly I think they were hoping that some of this would be a phase and that I would come back to being more like my family. And this was all really, really tough for them. So I'm taking the long route in telling this story, but there was always tension. For as much love as was there was always tension, because who and how I am in the world did not line up with their understanding of things. And that was really just tough. So when my mother died, when I was 25, my mom died of cancer. And it was really sudden. And we had just gone through the hardest time in our relationship. And I won't get into all of that right now. But I'm not hiding it. It's too many tangents to retell all the stories. But we had gone through something very hard. And we weren't really on speaking terms. And she got cancer. And so I went around and I brought my son around her, and, but she was going quickly. I feel like she died within a month. And we never really got to work it out. And so I was married and had a son. My brother was single, but she left everything to my brother, her house and all her stuff. We were able to get her car. I had to pay a lot. I could have just bought a car. But in any case, so the house and all the stuff in it went to my brother. I had because my brother was the one, because of the falling out that we had, he's the one that was there. So I never had any jealousy or anything like that. In my mind, I'm grateful to him because he was there and he was with her and he handled things. And, I was there the day that she died. And I was actually at the radio station. I went earlier in the day. They were saying she was in hospice at home and she was on a lot of drugs and things like that. And I went, and she kept trying to wake up and she kept trying to get up, and she was mostly out of it. But at one point she focused on me and she's like, "Oh, you're here." I said, "Yeah, of course I'm here. I love you," and all this kind of stuff. And we couldn't have a full conversation. But I had started going around because I didn't want, as much hurt as we were in, I didn't want her to die without me being there. So I was there. And we talked, and she kept trying to get out of bed. And I was just telling her, just, lay down. It's okay. You can just relax. And she's like, I'm so happy you're here. And I was like, yeah, of course I'm here. So then the Rhymesayers radio show was that evening. And so I went to that. And when I got out of it, my brother called. I think he knew that the radio show was happening. And he said, she died. But if you can come right now, we'll wait to let the people know so that you can see her, So I went in there and there's your mom, she's gone. And there's no more talking and there's no more working it out. And part of what the spiritual path does is prepare us to live with that reality constantly. There's graves everywhere in Istanbul. And Muslims differ about how you should interact with the people in the graves, but there's no question about the fact that, we believe that the souls are present there and we greet them and things like that. So I take my daughters, yesterday we went to like a dinner party and there's a graveyard on the way. There's just graves everywhere in Istanbul. And so we stopped and, we talked about what we believe about the people of the grave. We do it almost every day and greet them. And my 4-year-old is learning Quran. And so she recited some Quran and things like that on the way there and on the way back. Like the spiritual path is really about you're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die. We forget it. We're a very death denying culture. So, but it's like, yeah, there she is. That's it. In this life, there's no more. That's it. And I mentioned in a song that I have called Apple Tree Me, learn my first song from my mom, and then I watched him zip her face up in a bag and drag her off. I mean, the coroner came to get her, and they were just really kind of rough. I couldn't believe it. They were kind of rough, and just the visual of them putting her body in a bag, and there's a zipper, and it zips from the feet up to the head, but it's like you see them zip your mother up in a bag over her face, like a zipper goes over her face, and then they just put her in a van and drive away. And then that's that. That's it. And so my brother inherited her house, but he also got all these pictures and all these things. And I made a post on Instagram because he just sent me some photos. He was going through some things and he said, "Hey, I found these books. Do you want these things?" And it was several things that he sent me. One was a copy of the Quran. It's like a leather-bound copy of the Quran that I think was my first Quran that I actually bought. The first one I got was from the library. And the Quran, at least back then, was the number one stolen book from the library. Because people would go get it. Because it's like, the early 90s. This was 92, 93. Like, you didn't really necessarily know where to go get a Quran. I didn't have a job. So my first Quran was from the library. I think it was from the school library, actually. It was all English. And it had, now I know they were Ottomans on the front of but there were pictures of people on the front, which the Muslims wouldn't do that, But this was done by Orientalists, like by Westerners who were doing their, we're going to tell you what the Quran says. Don't listen to the Muslims. We'll tell you what the Quran says. And it was a Koran, Koran. That was the first one that I got. And then I think probably when I converted to Islam, they probably gave me a copy of the Yusuf Ali Quran, which, again, was a really prominent, popular one, especially in the 90s. Everyone probably, there was only like 3 common translations in that time that you could get. It was really limited. Now there's a lot. Now there's the clear Quran and, all these other translations, and it's dope. That's the way it works, But these early folks with these early translations, and so somewhere along the way, I came across this leather-bound copy of the Quran. I remember what it smells like. I remember what it looks like. But when I left my mother's house in that time, I left everything and I lost everything. And I just was like, I don't know what she's going to do with my stuff. I just need to get away and I need to be safe and I need to start my life, So I left, and I left the first time when I was 17, and then I came back briefly in my early 20s around the time that my son was born. I stayed there for a few months, and that probably was one of the worst times of my life and the greatest regret that I have in life. It's during times of repentance, and it's the number one thing that haunts me is that I didn't handle that particular time right with my mother, and it was the last part of her life. It's the regret of my life. And I also can have some grace with myself. I was 23 or something, I was in this space of trying to construct my own world. There wasn't really a roadmap for what I was doing. And there was a lot of very real tension between us. And I understand where I was coming from. I understand where she was coming from. And it was just really hurtful for her too. Both of us were just really deeply hurt by the break between us. And, I had dreams after that I pray those mean something. I pray that those are real, and I trust Allah that they are. I had dreams where they asked me to plan her funeral when she died, and I did. And she didn't have any particular religious beliefs that were like solid. She kind of believed a lot of things. But there was this church that she used to go to, and so I was like, okay, I'll plan. They asked me to plan the wedding or the funeral, so I was like, I'm going to plan the funeral that she would want, because it's not like there's like a religious code that she followed. So we'll do it in this church. This church is a very liberal church. You can do whatever you want up in there, to a certain degree. Same church, by the way, that when my grandmother died, I rapped at her funeral. That was my first time rapping on stage, was at my grandmother's funeral. And I'm getting to that. It's taken me so long. But I rapped at my grandmother's funeral in that same church when I was 8 years old. First time I got on a microphone and rapped. I'll talk about that in a second, inshallah. But so my mother died, and I'm like, okay, let's have the gathering that she would want. Let's have her favorite snacks, and let's have her favorite music, and let's have only her favorite people talk. And let's basically have a celebration of her life, which is kind of what we did when Idea died. It was like, maybe not all the snacks and stuff, but like, his favorite music was around, his favorite people were, all that kind of stuff. I really just wanted to have a celebration of her life, but her family was like, no, that's not proper. And so they ended up doing just the stale funeral, whatever. But then I had a dream a few nights later that we actually had the funeral that I wanted to have. But my mother was at the funeral. So it was basically a party, and it basically was like her favorite party. And so we're hanging out, and in the dream, I don't know if you have this glow, like this afterglow of a great event that you put on. Me and my wife used to have these like gatherings at our house in Minneapolis, and everyone would leave, and the house is a big mess, and you got this big pile of dishes, and you spent all this money, but it's like, man, that was dope. That was so great. You know what I mean? And it's kind of just the afterglow. You're just kind of sitting in the mess, and it's like that was beautiful. And it was that kind of vibe in this dream. And my mom was like, that was really great. I said, yeah, that's should be your funeral. That's your celebration of your life. And she's like, yeah, but the only sad thing is I have to die now. Like I have to go now. And I was like, yeah, but and we hugged, and then in the dream that was it. And some dreams are true. Dreams can either come from the Creator and from the angelic realm, or they can come from the demonic realm, or they can come from ourselves. They can come from our own soul, from our own egos, and from our own mind and our own psyche. So those are three different sources, not only of dreams, but also of our thoughts. Like our thoughts can come from those places as well, from all those different sources. So I pray that was a true dream, but long story long, my brother inherited her stuff. And so now he's going through those things slowly but surely. So my first Quran that I bought, he sent me a picture of it, and he's like, do you want this? And I said, yeah. Because I don't like to keep stuff. I'm not a hoarder. I'm not a collector. I don't like keeping things. And I've lost everything I owned multiple times in life for various reasons, usually for something I believe in, and walking away from a situation or getting kicked out of a situation or whatever, divorces and, all this kind of stuff. So I'm not too attached to things, but there are a few things that do mean something to me. And so when he found that Quran, honestly, I'd forgotten about it, but there was a fire at our house one time. I came home from school, and there had been a fire in our house, and I remember running into my house and just being like, is my Quran okay? And so he found that. But then he also found a yearbook photo of me that I posted. And of course, you post a yearbook picture of yourself, it's going to get more response than any of the music you make. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what social media is set up for. Like, yeah, you can take all these hours and spend your life trying to master your craft. That's cool. But like, man, show us a picture of your girlfriend's butt, or your kids being cute, or yourself in some, yourself as a kid or something. Show us that. That's what's really going to get. The robots, the algorithm are really going to reward that. So I posted that because it was part of the find, But then my brother found a book that my grandfather had gifted me around the time that I converted to Islam. I can't remember if it was right when I was 15 or maybe the year later. But I think it was probably for Christmas. And he gave me a book, and it's just called Muslims in America. I remember the book being nothing special. You know what I mean? It was just some non-Muslim writing a book about us. And there wasn't anything too special. But he wrote an inscription in the book, and my brother sent me that, a screen, like a photo that he took of it. And it says, "To Ali, best wishes to Ali." I don't have it in front of me, but best wishes to Ali. The Newman, that's my family name, who travels new trails. And that just really, really struck me, because of the fact that, first of all, he's acknowledging and paying respect to what's going on with me. When I was given the name Ali and I really wanted a Muslim name, at first it was just part of the horror of me not being what my parents thought I was going to be. It was a problem for them in the beginning. Now, by the time they died, they were both happy calling me Ali. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had an uncle who he loved, Abu Talib. And Abu Talib looked after him and cared for him and sacrificed to be close to him. But we're not aware of Abu Talib ever becoming a Muslim. But he cared for him. And one of the things they say when you convert to Islam is identify who's your Abu Talib, who's the person who they might not become a Muslim, but they're going to defend your right to seek and to be on the journey that you're on. They're always going to have your back, even if they're not Muslim. And honestly, my parents both were like that in their own ways. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not so cut and dry as And my dad actually came to the mosque one time when I was giving a sermon. And I didn't know this, but when it was time to stand up and pray, it's called the khutbah, the talk on Fridays. That's when Muslims have their, Jews go to the synagogue on Saturdays, Christians go on Sundays, Muslims go Friday afternoon. Jumu'ah, the gathering, the communal prayer, and there's a short talk. And in our community, there was a long talk. In the Black American Muslim community, in Imam Warthi Muhammad's community, because these are people that come from church. And church was like the community gathering. You dress up, you see, you be seen, you gather, you know what I mean? And then afterwards you all eat together. There's bean pie and fried fish and spaghetti and cake and bean soup and all this kind of stuff. But this community came out of the Nation of Islam. And in a lot of ways, we see ourselves as the continuation of the Nation of Islam. So, it was a thing. And so the talk would be long. Like, you would talk for an hour, minute at least, and then you stand up and do the prayer. So my dad came and saw me do the talk, and I knew that he was there, and I appreciated it. But what I didn't know, he didn't tell me until years later, that when we did the prayer, he actually got in the line and prayed. And he actually semi broke down. I never really saw him cry, but there was times where he would take deep breaths and he was fighting back tears. But he was like, that's the only time that I've prayed like that. It's the only time that I've ever got on my knees and put my face on the ground. And, and I think he had watched the movie Malcolm X all these years later. He didn't watch it when it came out. He knew it was important to me. But I think some things he would just leave alone. If he knew they were important to me, maybe out of love, he was leaving them alone because he's like, I don't want to have judgments about this thing. I'd rather just be aware that this is something important to him and just let him have it. So maybe that's what he was doing. But he watched it years later and he's like, the scene where Malcolm is in prison and he's just coming into Islam, but he's having a hard time getting on his knees to pray. He was like, that reminded me of the time that I saw you speak at the mosque and we prayed. And he's like, I prayed. I'm like, man, I had no idea that he had done that, And it's a beautiful thing. And my dad also, later on in his life, he kind of unofficially adopted a black neighbor kid that lived in their neighborhood in Pennsylvania. And he didn't even tell me about it. I heard about it from my son, went to go visit him as you know, he was a little kid. He went to go visit him, and he came back, and he's like, "Yeah, we're hanging out." And I feel so bad. I can't remember the kid's name, but it was a very like identifiably. It was a very like culturally black name. He's like, "Yeah, they brought this kid to hang out with us," and I've got a lifetime of responding to my parents' unrecognized racism, and I'm like, "Oh, so they brought some black kid from their neighborhood because my black son is going to hang out with them." And turns out, when I didn't know until I went for his funeral, but that kid's mom was around the house and she was like, "Yo, your dad really unofficially adopted this kid." Like they had moved from Philly, out to this, it wasn't in Philly. It was like kind of like another kind of suburb city. They had moved there to get away from Philly, and my dad and his current wife or his last wife and her kids, they lived there. And she was like, "Yo, he came over here every day, and your dad would help him with his homework, and he had chores to do, and he would give him allowance, and he was like a father to him." And this woman spoke at my father's funeral, and she's like, "This man was like he was like almost like a husband or like a baby's daddy that I didn't have to have sex with." And everybody laughed. But like everybody knew this woman and the kid. And she told me, she's like, "Your dad told me." And she's like, "I don't know what it means, but in a lot of ways, this was his way to try to make amends or atone for mistakes he made with you." And he didn't tell me that. And he also, then his wife told me that he had a full computer full of stuff where he had been tracking me. And he had all my interviews and all of my, articles about me and reviews and all that kind of stuff. He had a whole computer just dedicated to that. These are things that I didn't know until he was gone, But and so they, in their own way, they really supported me. And my mom used to drive me to Juma. She told the people at school, like, "No, he really has to leave." This is before the Somalis were in Minnesota in big numbers. There was some Somali people there. But like now, everybody's got to know what Juma is. Everybody has to know what Ramadan and Eid are. Everybody's got to know all this stuff. Everybody, you got to know that the Muslim kids are going to fast, even if you think they shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? 10-year-old kids are just going to be like, "No, it's Ramadan. I'm not eating." And they're like, "But Abdi." And like, no, he's fasting. You know what I mean? Lil Fadumo is fast. She's going to fast. That's what's happening. And they're going to make wudu. They're going to wash up. They're going to wash their feet. So you can make a wudu station for them, or you can have them put their feet in the sink and wash up for prayer. But those feet are getting washed. I love the Somali people so much. They're really, really special people. And when they showed up in Minneapolis, they made everything better. Not that anybody ever thanked them for it, but they made everything better for the Muslims in Minnesota specifically. And they did that in a lot of places. They did that in Toronto and San Diego and Ohio and a lot of places. The Somalis just show up in big numbers, just living Islam. That's just what they're going to do. And I love them for that. And so, yeah, but at the time that I converted, I'm like, well, I have to leave on Friday afternoon to go do my religion. And they're like, "No, you don't. You're making that up." And my mom went in there and was like, "No, it really is. That's what Islam is." He really goes and like sometimes he even gives the sermons and like it's a real thing. So she had to go to bat for me and for me to fast and to one time we were supposed to dissect a pig, and I was fasting. And in Islam, in the Jewish kosher tradition, you can't touch pigs. In Islam, you can touch them, you just can't eat them. And so I was really honest about the fact that it's not that my religion says I can't dissect a pig, but it smells like formaldehyde and I'm fasting and it's disgusting. Like it's going to make me, the formaldehyde and I think they made an exception for me. So my mom went to bat with me, and then she would come pick me up and drive me to Juma. And she'd be smoking cigarettes in the car. And I'd be like, "Mom, I'm going to smell like cigarettes when I show up for Juma." And she's just like, "Nah, open the window, But my brother inherited her stuff and got this book. And so from my grandfather to even acknowledge, like just to validate, this is my dad's dad, validating and acknowledging that for him to acknowledge me as Ali and write it inside this book that's going to get opened in front of everybody, that was his way of saying that he respected my journey that I was on. he wasn't going to weigh in, and he wasn't going to take sides, and he wasn't going to mediate, and he wasn't going to, he wasn't that kind of person. Very non-confrontational. You know, he was he was a journalist and really tried to be objective in things. And even to the point where in our family, we kind of felt like we didn't know him because he would just interview. Like the way that he got close to family members is he would interview you because he's an old school journalist. But that was his way of acknowledging that, no, there's something, this is valid. This is who this guy is. And I was 15 years old. This is who this guy is. Best wishes to Ali. That's major. The Newman, so he's saying you're still in our family though. Like you're not out of our family. The Newman, which is our family name, the Newman who travels new trails, which is crazy because like I didn't remember this. I had until my brother sent me a picture, I didn't even remember it. But I'm like, man, I have Travelers Media, the Travelers Podcast. Like it's all about being a traveler, you know what I mean? And now I live in another country with my family. And this dude, so his name is Jack Newman. We called him Grandpa Jack. And then he signed it Grandpa Jack. So I got all these people hitting me up now because I posted this photo. And people are just like, man, thank God for Grandpa Jack. But man, when I think about this man, and now, I'm in my 40s and he's been gone. He's been gone for years. He's been gone for over 20 years. And my dad's been gone for over 10. And what's sad about this is that both of them died of suicide. My grandfather and my dad both died of suicide. And, that's a whole other thing that like, man, what do I do with that? None of the men in my family died of old age or natural causes. The men in my family have died by their own hands. So I'm always telling my brother and my son, hey, like for us, breaking the cycle means you can't kill yourself. Don't kill yourself. Please don't kill yourself. You know what I mean? And I'm not a person that's lived with like suicidal thoughts. But I had one moment like that. I had one moment where it was very real. It was a fleeting moment. But I know what that, I think that Allah gave me that as a gift so that I know how real that thought is. Because if you've never experienced it, you'd be like, oh, that's the easy way out. That's the coward's way out. Those people are suckers. No, I experienced it. It was a fleeting moment, but I did. And I made a song about it, video about it. It's called Writer's Block. But I really was like, man, if I was dead, I wouldn't have to worry about disappointing people with my new music. It's like that pressure to deliver, like once you've had some success. And there's a whole, my family and all these fans and all these people. I got BK1 dedicating his life to, me help him get my voice out. Like I can't let people down. And I felt like I might, And but once that's a reality, once somebody that you look up to and identify with, it's a similar thing with somebody speaking the truth that you can't know how to say for yourself. Like once somebody that I identify with and look up to even ends their life that way, then that becomes a reality for me. It's just like if somebody if your parents go to college, the chance of you going to college goes way up. If they buy a house, chance of you buying a house goes way up. If your parents die of suicide, your chances go way up. And so, for me, I was having that feeling and I was in a high hotel room and I thought about Donny Hathaway, who is my favorite singer. I can't listen to him regularly. He's not my most listened to singer because I can only listen to his music when I need it the most. And it's hard to even think about it. Like I kind of avoid it, to be honest. It can't just be on a playlist because when that music comes on, it's like I'm in a certain space. I probably haven't listened to Donny Hathaway in 3 years. I think I listened to it during the pandemic when it's like, okay. And when there was all this stuff going on and I left my home and left Rhymesayers and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, all right, time to go there. Like, let's, you know what I mean? Like, all right, we're doing Donny Hathaway. And I'm going to sit here and cry for a couple hours. Like, that's what today is, or that's what tonight is. So, yeah, that's how they passed. And so, but my grandfather, I think about the fact that he was a journalism professor. So he was in World War II. He was of German origin. Like his family came from Germany. At least that's what we were always told. I spit in a tube and I found out there's other stuff too, but that's how they identified. But he was in America during World War II. My understanding, and I may be wrong about this, there's just nobody to ask. Like, I don't have anybody to ask. I was just asking my brother, is it true Grandpa Jack was in World War II? And they always used to say, his sons, my father and uncles, used to say, Dad fought the war with a typewriter because he was a journalist and he wrote for the newspaper or something. But they had, that generation, my dad's generation, had some sense of pride around the fact that they had fought in World War II, that they fought the Nazis and things like that they were descendant from Germans, but they were in America and they had fought the Nazis. Like that was part of their pride. And my grandfather wouldn't talk about it, because I was like, well, what does it mean to you to be German? And the Germans did the Holocaust, but then you're in America and you're on the side of America. Like, what does that mean to you? No conversation, was not talking about that. But he also took his family and they moved to Nicaragua, and he taught journalism in Nicaragua, and he wrote a textbook. He wrote a journalism textbook in Spanish. And I remember seeing it. And his whole life, he wrote stories that he wanted to get published, and I don't think he ever got fulfillment as an artist. Like, he wanted his stories to be published. And so my family moved a lot, and we moved to different cities, and he would record these beautiful tapes. Like, he would sit with a tape recorder and just turn on the tape recorder and talk for a full side of a cassette tape, 30 minutes probably. And then he would flip it over, and then he would read out loud stories that he had written and that he was like submitting to magazines and journals and things like that. And I don't think he ever really got what he wanted as an author. But I was even thinking about the fact, like, that's the early podcast. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that I sit here and I basically make these 2-hour tapes now for you and whoever listens to these. That's a podcast. And he worked with words, and he cared about words, and he understood the idea of being a traveler, and really validated that for me in whatever in the way that he could. That he bought me a book about Islam, and gave it to me for Christmas. And those were times where, like, everybody opens their gifts together. And, like, if you get a book from Grandpa Jack, who's an author and he's a writer and he's a journalist, you get a book from him, it's like, oh, read what he wrote on the inside. That was a big thing. So that was a major message to me and to the family. That, like, man, let this guy cook. Let him he is exploring new things. And we should just validate that as a reality. You're still from yes, you're Ali, but you're also a Newman, and you're traveling new trails. It means a lot. I remember that same year, for my mom's birthday, I gave her a card. I gave her a card for her birthday, and I wrote in Arabic, Assalamu alaikum. I'm 15 years old. I just became Muslim. You know what I mean? You convert to a religion, especially as a teenager. It's like, you're always doing the most. And I was always doing the most, and I was not easy to deal with. And I'm still not always easy to deal with. People that love me are like, man, you can be really black and white sometimes with your thinking. And hopefully I'm smoothing out a little bit, as the years go on. But to me, if something's right, it's right. You know what I mean? And I'm down to have a conversation, and I'm down to learn nuances about this stuff. But, like, what's right is right, and the truths that people don't want to acknowledge are oftentimes the most important ones. And even if I make mistakes, acknowledging them, I'd rather make the mistake of acknowledging them imperfectly, recognizing them imperfectly. That's the mistakes I'm happy to make. I'm happy to have made mistakes along the way, trying to get to the truth and tell the truth and stand for the truth and sacrifice for the truth. That's what I believe in. I'm happy to make a million mistakes in that way. And I have, and most people do who are not prophets. Like, we're just, people that are trying to do good. So that really meant a lot, you know. And I just think about what it means to be that for somebody else. What does it mean to be that for somebody else? Like how am I showing up for other people in my life that need that? You know what I mean? Or where just that little bit of validation. Like I don't necessarily believe everything you believe, but I'm acknowledging that this is coming from a sincere place and it's worthy of acknowledgement. That the differences we have, you're coming from a good place, and we're not kicking you out of the family. We're not untribing you. You know. So it's a beautiful thing. I actually wrote a couple things on my phone. Let me see if there's other things that I was going to acknowledge. He was a journalist. He was a teacher. They moved to Nicaragua, sent me tapes, his military service, German identity. Oh, his wife, my grandmother, was also an educator. She was an early childhood development professor at University of Wisconsin. They both worked at University of Wisconsin. And so she worked with kids in preschool. And, you know, it's interesting that she was a teacher, and then they had 3 boys, and all 3 of their boys, they all married teachers. My mother was a teacher, and then both of my aunts were teachers. So that's a really beautiful thing. My grandmother, that's what I said I was going to talk about too. So my grandmother, those were the people in my life that I was sure loved me. Those are the people in my family. I knew that those 2 people loved me. Never any question about it. Even when I was little, even when I was going through all these different things. I remember my grandmother, she died when I was 8. And I remember she said to me, she was like, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" And we had these beautiful talks, and we would hang out with her, and I just loved being with them. Me and my younger brother, we just loved being with them. They created a little universe that you were in when you were with them, like everything you want from grandparents. And she said, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I'm going to be a rapper." And at that time, people didn't really even know what rap was. You know what I mean? Especially not these like 65-year-old white people from Madison in the early 80s. Like they didn't even really know what that was. But here's another thing that I'll mention that I don't think I've ever said this in public. But my grandfather was a clown. was like an actual, would put makeup on his face and wear a costume and go do go do like clown stuff. And he enlisted me to go with him. So when I was 6 years old, something like that, there's pictures of me somewhere. My brother probably has them or will find them along this path. I'm not putting those online. Forget you guys, man. I'm not doing that. I'm still an active MC. I might have to battle somebody sometime. I'm not doing that. I'm not having disaster or somebody. pull up a picture of me at 6 years old. I saw what Jay-Z did to Prodigy. You're not getting me on that one. But yeah, no, my grandfather was a clown, and he used to bring me with him, and I would have the makeup on, and I would go, but we were performing. It was early performance, you know what I'm saying? And so they knew that I had that gift. They knew that I had that thing too, that I performed. And so my grandmother was like, "What are you going to be?" And I'm like, "I want to be a rapper." And she's like, "You can do it." She's like, if you work at it every single day, whatever you work at every day, you'll be that. That's how you decide. Other people don't decide what you are in terms of what you want to do. If you do it every day, that's what you are. And I just remember that she didn't even really know what a rapper was. It wasn't a conversation about that. But she's like, anything you do every day is what you are. If you want to be an artist, if you do art every day, you're an artist. Nobody else gets to decide that. You decide that based on what you do. If you say you're a rapper, if you rap every day, you're a rapper. And so when she died, it was we did the funeral at that same church. I was 8 years old. And when they got done, and I had sang things at the church, and I had been in plays and things like that. I've always been a performer. I did little plays. I really loved Superman when I was a little kid. And me and my parents, thinking about they were great parents. They loved me, and they did everything they could. It's just the differences in American life. We lived different realities inside of the American experiment. And that's what caused the difficulty between us. Not that we didn't love each other, and not that we were bad to each other. But, when I was a little kid, in preschool, I think I was, or something like that. But I was super into Superman, and I liked to perform and things like that. And I would, act things out and all this kind of stuff. And I remember at one point they got a refrigerator box, and they cut a hole in it, and they made it into a phone booth. And we did a little play at my school where, like, my dad was Lex Luthor and my mom was Lois Lane and I was Superman. And I didn't remember that until just very recently, you know. And those are beautiful memories, So I was a performer, and they supported me in my performing. And I remember my dad having an argument with some other white people when I was a teenager, because these people were talking about how bad rap is. Like, they had heard gangster rap. There was like gangster rap and NWA. Like, it was like a big conversation late 80s. And they were saying this rap stuff is terrible. And I remember my dad was like yelling at them. He's like, you don't know what you're talking about. You've never heard rap. You only know what you've heard in the news. You've never heard rap. It's not for you. And you wouldn't understand it if you heard it. Like, it's almost a different language. But this stuff, like, there's a lot of very powerful, positive rap music. You just don't understand it. And, like, he never said that to me. You know what I'm saying? But I heard him saying that to other, like, middle-aged white people in the Midwest. And this was probably the late 80s, early 90s. I remember that. And I didn't know he felt that way, but I heard him saying that to them. So we were in the church. I'm 8 years old. My grandmother died. And that was the first death in my life that I really dealt with. And I remember being sad, and I remember, I've also always believed. I've always believed that this material life isn't all there is. I've always believed in God, very specifically. I never felt like the Christian church that I was part of, I never felt like that was particularly true. No disrespect, but I just never felt that. I never felt like these stories and these songs. I was like, this is kind of some theater that people are doing about God, but God is real, and this is fine. You know what I'm saying? I didn't think I wasn't like, it wasn't until, KRS-One and starting to question things. Why is Jesus white? Why is all this kind of stuff. Then I started to have certain feelings about the type of Christianity that I had been given. But for the most part, I was just like, okay, these people are trying to talk about God, and that's fine. But I never particularly believed it. So when my grandmother died and all the deaths in my life, I'm like, I just have believed very deeply that this plane is just one part of it, and it's not the best part. I've always known that too. This, what's called in Islam, the dunya is not the best part. The dunya is here to show us who we are. So that when it's all done, we see, like, once given our own free will, our own free range, like our own sovereignty and ability to make decisions and to create our, to acquire our deeds based on our intentions and things like that, that's what this life is about. But this is not the best part of life. The unseen world is much bigger than this, and this isn't all there is. So I've always believed that. And when my grandmother died, I knew that, and I believed it, and I was going to miss her. She's one of the people that I love the most, and I cried, and I was sad, and everything else. And I remember a specific moment when she was sick. She had cancer, and her battle with cancer was longer. But I remember my Grandpa Jack sitting, and he was just sitting there very quiet, because he never showed us his emotions, and we never really knew much about him and what he thought about things. He was always neutral, which I've come to see as one of the outs of whiteness. Like, when you are considered to be the default, when you are the norm, you don't have to weigh in on anything, because it's just taken for granted that you're good and you're human and you're worthy, and you don't have to be anybody. You don't have to explain yourself. So you can just be neutral. And you don't have to, you can just say, well, I don't believe in anything. That's not true. Well, I'm just regular. What kind of music do you listen to? I listen to everything. No, you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, have an identity, have an opinion. But, when you're the dominant norm, you don't have to. You don't owe anybody an explanation for yourself. So you just are. And I got to think about the fact that this man died of suicide. What if he had actually spoken about what he believed and what he thought? He never weighed in on anything that I'm aware of, that I was ever part of. And I would ask him about stuff, and he would just start interviewing me about what I thought. And that was his way of connecting. And it's great when you're a kid because you feel like, man, I am important. So I've been interviewed from the time I was a little kid, and I was given this feeling that, like, yeah, I'm allowed to stand up and talk, and it matters what I say. Like, he has a major hand in all of that. And then the love of words and storytelling and all of this stuff. Like, for me having the audacity to sit in a room or sit in this studio and just talk, and like, yeah, somebody wants to hear this. A lot of people don't have that. That's, but I do. So I was at her funeral, and we did the service and everything, and I'm just looking at the microphone the whole time. And so then when they were done, everybody went in the other room, and I just went up and I touched the mic. I had seen people tap on a microphone, and I touched it, and it was the first time I ever touched a mic. Boom, boom. And it made a sound in the room. The mic was still on. The PA was still on. And I just picked it up, and I did a combination of rapping and stand-up comedy and sound effects and beatboxing. Because it's my first time talking into a microphone. And people came in from the other room and sat, and it became a whole secondary thing. It was like this part 2. It was act 2 of my grandmother's funeral. And I'm sitting there doing beatboxes and sound effects. And I remember I knew there was, like, I couldn't say all the rap songs. I couldn't do Slick Rick. You know what I mean? Maybe I could do Children's Story or something like that. But I couldn't do, Hey Young World. But I couldn't do Children's Story. There was a lot of things that I couldn't do. I couldn't do Lottie Dottie. You know what I mean? I could do Children's Story. I couldn't do Lottie Dottie. I couldn't do Dear Yvette by LL Cool J. You know what I mean? But there's so I was doing the things I knew I could do. And then also in stand-up, like, I can't do Rudy Ray Moore, which I was already listening to at 8 years old. I can't do Richard Pryor, which I was already listening to. But I could do Bill Cosby. And so I did some Bill Cosby routines. And now we know about Bill Cosby. But back then, Bill Cosby was just America's dad, you know what I'm saying? So I was doing stuff from Bill Cosby himself, all those sound effects that he did, getting your teeth cleaned and all kind of stuff like that. And I rapped, and, like, that was my first time ever being on stage. And there was a group of people around me that were listening, and they liked it. They loved it. Like, everyone's just looking because, I was an 8-year-old kid. None of it was planned. None of it was prepared. And then also, when you're a little albino white boy, I was rapping. I was like rapping because I always knew, like, I was always connected to really great hip hop music. And you know what I think I did? I think I did the Rappin' Duke. Daha, daha. So Biggie shouts that out in a song. But when you were a little kid, it's this man rapping like he's John Wayne. I didn't even know who John Wayne was, by the way. I just knew he was doing this silly voice. So you think you're bad with your rap? Well, I'll tell you, Pilgrim, I started the crap. When you were in diapers and wetting the sheets, I was at the Ponderosa, rapping to the beat. Da, da. I just found out there's a video for this song. And somebody told me, like, what I read or heard or something, that man actually owned his own masters. And so he made all that money. It was a black man. Crazy. But I love that song. And, to me, that was like, as a kid, it was like, this is comedy, it's a story, it's amazing. So I did stuff like that. And, so it's weird because, like, I kind of carry as my identity this feeling that things were always tense with my family. In general, although I don't have any enmity towards any person in my family. There's no person in my family that I think is bad or that I feel bad towards at all. None of them. But that thing, and what the song Ottomans, it ties in with the song Ottomans. Because basically what I'm saying is, like, man, I took my family from South Minneapolis when it was burning to Turkey, to Istanbul, to and I know And people keep asking me, well, how come you're not talking about the Armenians and how come you don't criticize the Turkish government? And I've seen this whole conversation online that people don't know that I can search my name on Twitter and see what people are saying. Someone's like, yeah, he praises the Turkish government, but he doesn't talk about the. And I'm like, I haven't said a word about the Turkish government. I talk about the Turkish people. I talk about Turkish culture. I talk about what it's like to be a religious Muslim living in Turkey with daughters who like to skateboard and take pictures and listen to records and listen to rock music. And you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the experience that I have here. But there are people that are like, why don't you criticize the Turkish government? And that's a whole conversation. Maybe I'll talk about that in the Ask Me Anything episode. But, I just think about like the fact that my life led me here. And that's what that song is about, that you have a different perspective. From the bottom of the Metropolitan to the home of the Ottomans, the globe is my Ottoman. Kick my feet up on every part of it. Like I'm the Newman who travels different trails. Like, that's such a beautiful thing. And the fact that he saw that in me at 15, that by the time I was 15, we performed together. He had already heard my voice for hours and sending tapes back and forth. And it's just so easy to lose track of like who's done what for us. And there's a lot of things I disagreed with him about, but there also is that very real human connection. So releasing that song and then my brother finding that stuff and those things being part of me talking about what this album is and what my life has been like, and just, being able to sit here and reflect with you about what all of this is. It's really beautiful. I'm really grateful for it. Like I said, I don't have any expectations for what the numbers of this album will be. I just know that I made something that matters to me. And I made it with somebody that I became dear friends with. And we made it from our hearts and with our hands. Like, I recorded this. A lot of the album I recorded on my podcast microphone because I didn't have a studio. I didn't have a place to record. He made all this stuff on the ASR sampler, and then he drew these animated videos by hand, with him not fully understanding, like, we come from different traditions. And so I'm talking about the Islamic tradition, and he's taking that and making visual stuff out of it that's his interpretation of it, But so like a genuine connection between the two of us. I'm just grateful that at this stage in my life that I have this beautiful group of people around me, and that I'm able to make what comes out of my heart, and that there are still people here to receive it. This is an important chapter in my work, in my life's work, a very important chapter. Because like, this is what I made. And a lot of it I made to like soothe myself from the pain of what I was going through. It was hard leaving. I left because I felt I didn't have a choice. You know what I mean? Like I said, that's not the first time that's happened. And it's something for me to think about and talk to my spiritual guides about, and my therapist about, and my family and friends about, and all that kind of stuff. We actually just had the Islamic month of Ramadan is coming up. And the month before it, which is what we're in now, is called Sha'aban. And it's the month of the Prophet Muhammad. They say it's the month of the Prophet Muhammad. And one of the things that he said is that in the middle of the month of Sha'aban, so the middle day of Sha'aban, meaning that it's 2 weeks until Ramadan, if Allah finds a believer who has no enmity in their heart for anybody, he forgives them completely for everything they've done. So basically a person who can forgive everybody with no exceptions. And my teachers talk about this. You have to forgive everybody with no exceptions. And people say, well, I want to, but it's hard. Like, my heart still clings. My heart still has attachment to my pain. And I thought it was interesting because to forgive somebody, we have to acknowledge that they wronged us, that that's a real thing. And in this society that just gaslights and denies, to acknowledge, like, yes, I was actually wronged, or maybe I am still being wronged. And I'm choosing to not hold on to and identify with that experience of the real, very real pain. And we forgive people just for the sake of Allah. It's not for them, And so I've got a number of people that I was once close with and we're not on speaking terms. And I'm the one that chose it. Like I chose that. Not after talking and crying and oh, so I don't know if you can hear that. Somebody's drilling in my building. So it's probably time to wrap up. But I say all that to say that in this time of, gratitude and in this time of thinking about forgiving, it just makes me think of the gaps in gratitude that we forget. One of the sayings that we're taught is that human beings get and forget, and Allah gives and forgives. That's not from the tradition. It's just a cool saying, but I think there's a lot of truth in it. And it may even come from Christians for all I know, or another tradition. God gives and forgives, man gets and forgets. But like, we've been loved and cared for by people a lot of times that we don't even remember or even know about. Like we don't remember when we were babies, all the people that cared for us and nurtured us and cleaned us and all that kind of stuff. We don't even remember all that stuff. And to have a memory of it, like literally this stuff just came flooding back to my memory. And being able to share it with you is a major, major, major blessing. And so a lot of this music on this album was made both for me and Just to heal. And like we did a lot of healing, and it's a really beautiful thing. And so I'm very grateful that you're here to listen to all this stuff and to be part of it and to receive it. It means a lot to me. I went through a situation where our music community kind of was canceled and canceled each other. And, I talk about this all the time, but I went from being a straight up like local celebrity to now when I'm in Minnesota, I don't know. Like, I don't know what people think about me. And maybe they're not thinking about me. And that's tight. Is that there's something to me. I really appreciate the fact that, and living in Üsküdar, Istanbul, nobody knows or cares that I'm a rapper. Like, there are people that are aware of it, but it's kind of like knowing like, oh yeah, that person did some cool thing a long time ago in some different place, but now I'm just their neighbor. Like nobody's tripping. And I love that. Like I love the fact that I know that this was never about fame for me. I know that. Everybody likes feeling that way. Everybody likes to be celebrated. I also felt a lot of danger when that was happening. Even now, like, when people start sharing videos and things like that, once you start reaching a bunch of people that didn't ask to hear from you, there's danger in it. But I'm happy to know that for me, this is about exploring and it is about expressing and it is about genuinely sharing. I love that. I'm so grateful for that. That feels something like a type of sincerity from everybody involved. Like we're doing this because it matters to us. We're doing it because we're sharing the human experience together. And that's a gift that were I to lose that I would resonate that. That would hurt. That would hurt. If I couldn't explore and express and share and bond over what it means anymore, that would hurt, I think. Who knows? Maybe I would just be connected only to Allah, and that might be the most beautiful thing ever. If that were to happen, then that would be what's written, and it would be beautiful. But I'm not hoping for that. You know what I'm saying? Just like someday everybody's going to go, and when they do, it'll be a major lesson. But I'm happy that lesson isn't now. That's not the lesson of today. Today is a different lesson. In any case, more new music is coming. This is just the beginning. We have a lot of these animated shorts. We got a lot of stories to share. We got a lot of, thoughts and art that we made. And eventually this whole album will come out. Stay tuned for the announcement. The announcement's coming. And also there'll be a pre-order. Also, there's another song. So next week, when you're hearing this, next week, there'll be a new song, a new video. You'll be able to pre-order the album. You'll hear more about the album and all that kind of stuff. So all that is coming. Thank you. I love you. I hope you know that. I hope that all the people that listen, even if you're listening and you're on that list of people that I'm not on speaking terms with now, I'm gonna go actually later in Ramadan to West Africa and be with my sheikh. And I really want to talk about getting on speaking terms with everybody. I want to forgive everybody because I need forgiveness. I need a lot of forgiveness. I've hurt a lot of people. Me trying to do the right thing and trying to do what's right and all that kind of stuff. And some people I've probably hurt by not dealing with them anymore. And my parents are in that group. Like I hurt them, they hurt me. Like we hurt each other. And I need forgiveness for that. In Islam, we're taught that paradise lies at the feet of the mother, and one of the greatest sins that a person can do is to disrespect and to hurt their parents. And I did a lot of that. And that's of everything in life, that's what I pray I'm forgiven for. The most, like that is the greatest of all of the things that I've done, is I said things and I said things in ways and language and all kind of stuff that I just, and Allah covers us, because you didn't see that. There are people that have my name and my face and my words tattooed on them. If they saw the way that I spoke to my mother in those moments, they might not want that. One of the names of Allah is As-Sattar, which means the one who covers our faults. Even me telling you about it, you didn't see it, you didn't hear it, And, sometimes people imagine the worst, and it wasn't the worst. It's not like I was calling her names or anything like that or disparaging her or anything like that. But I mean, the way that I was talking, I had so much anger and I had so much hurt and resentment and all of this stuff. And, we live our lives trying to figure it out, So like being able to do this with other people is a major blessing. And I'm very grateful for it. So the fact that you're here, the fact that you've been here, some of y'all listen to this stuff and you remind me of things I said. Somebody, I was just talking, put that picture of me at 15 and my grandfather saying best wishes to Ali. People were like, I killed little Jason. He was only 15. So does good traits together made Ali. I'm like, oh, I forgot I said that. You know what I mean? Freedom made free. Somebody said, it's amazing. I'm like, man, that's true. Yeah, that's right. I did say that. And I'm sure when I every time I mention a lot of these things, people will mention my song called Picket Fence or other things. I mention my father. People remind me of my song Out of Here. We've shared a lot. And in that sense, there's nobody who's been given a greater gift than what we have. We've been given a great gift. Like other people have more fame, other people have more impact, other people have more money, no doubt. But in the sense of like being able to share what's in my heart and in my life, Jay-Z doesn't have more than me. You know what I mean? Drake doesn't have more than me. There's nobody that has more than me in what matters to me. Like what I wanted and what I asked Allah for, I've been given completely. I can say anything in these songs. I can say anything on this podcast, and somebody will say like, yo, that means a lot to me. And as an artist, that's what you actually want. Like that's what we actually want, I believe. At least that's what I really want. Some people want to be famous. I've witnessed that. There are people that want to be famous. There are people that want to get their family out of the hood. I don't relate to wanting to be famous, and I don't respect it very much. I'm just going to keep it really real. I don't respect that very much, because I don't think I don't think that's an objective good. It's an objective good to want to get your family out of poverty and danger. That I respect. I don't believe that you have to do the things that people do to do that. I don't believe that because the Creator is in control. Allah is in control. I don't believe that you have to make crazy, demoralizing, demeaning music to do that. I don't think that I don't think you have to. And plus, I've just, like, I know too many people that have made the music that they wanted to make and only said what they wanted to say, and they're doing fine. It's a struggle for all of us, but like, I know Merce, I know Blueprint, I know Yasin, I know people that have done it on all different levels. I know Mally, I know Open Mike Eagle, I know way too many people that have just made the music they believe in and have been able to live life, So, for me, what we do here together is the greatest gift of my work. I want to say it's the greatest gift of all, because the connection with the divine and the family and things like that. But in terms of my work in the world that I've been doing since I was a little kid, I mean, you're the answer to my prayers. And I hope you know that. I think you know that. All right, I'm going to be quiet now. I've been talking a long, long time. If you made it all the way to the end of this, I love you very much. Please go support the music if you like it. Like if you see what I'm saying, even while I sit here and talk about it, go and stream it and share it and put comments on it and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with the podcast. Go look at the Zakat Foundation. Look at the stuff they do because they also support this work. And shout out to everybody that listens and gives me feedback. This podcast is produced by BK1, although he's focused completely right now on getting ready to release this new album. And so I'm just doing these solo episodes so he doesn't have to worry about the podcast right now. Much love to you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace.